I'm telling you now, it's not about the money. So I just love it. It's me. I am my passion. I know it's a bit sad, but it's okay. At least I enjoy it.
Yeah. Now, tell us more. Where and how did the passion come about for you to end up, you know, in this industry that you're at now?
Very interesting. I studied to become a chemical engineer, and then I was not very happy about my life choices. And I have a very supportive family, and they asked me, "What do you like?" And I mean, my hobbies are museums, art, history, all of that. And I took this one subject, and this woman changed my life. It was a module on the Mayan history, South American history. And I'm like, I'm hooked. I like this because the following chapters we were going to discuss Barbie as well. So this is what cultural history is about. And then I just took all of it and I changed my degree and I became a cultural historian.
Uh,
So from there on out, I just, going to the moon on this whole journey of local heritage that I feel we need to make international heritage and really open it up, not just to international tourists, but to our local community as well, since the local community is the ones that are actually going to come and visit and see it and tend to it.
Yeah, so obviously, as a cultural historian and as a historian of note, now many people will argue and say, in terms of how our history is being recorded and documented, there's a trend to there's a trend where our history tends to favor men more than women. So the history of women is not properly recorded and documented. What is your view on that?
I'd say that's not just, from a man and a woman point of view. I think the fun thing about history for me is it's ever changing because at any other given stage, someone will be left out of the story that is written. So as time actually goes on, we include histories from different cultures, from both men and both women. Interesting that you asked me that question. It was actually on medical history. Uh, it was women that said, research done on women is not necessarily done to the T as it has been done on men. So, for instance, something like that, I have to say, has been excluded quite a lot, but we've had prominent women throughout history. So, as a general point, I feel we have really been included. Women have made waves historically. Let's just look at Cleopatra, for instance. We've got queens, Sorki Bortman, for instance, from South Africa. I mean, that woman's history was told 100 years over and over again because just the journey of that woman, even in death, just continued with her history and her story. I can't really say there's anything, from a man that had such a contested story in South Africa that is written. So maybe, yes, to a small extent, but we really cannot discount the fact that women have made waves in history.
Now, as an avid reader, obviously, do you think technology is impacting on reading skills, perhaps? And if so, how can we promote a culture of reading amongst the young people?
Well, the thing about technology is it's supposed to make your life better. This is my opinion. It's a very interesting question to ask a historian, someone that likes books and likes writing notes. So reading is not just where you can get your information from, it's an actual skill transfer. Back in the day when you had to take out a book and do research, it wasn't Googled. You had to go to those catalog little cards and get your subject word and then go. So that's actually a life skill that is lost to the younger generation. And just reading a book from start till finish, not doing a middle chapter, end chapter, and then in between, like scrolling through TikToks. I think it's a skill that's necessarily lost to the youth that they actually should pick up on. So just for that fact, for concentration and actually, dedication, having a start to an end, life skills is what you actually do find in reading, not necessarily just, trying to make your life easier, reading up, being more informed. Um, but yeah.
Great stuff. Now, Melissa, I mean, as a historian, some people would argue that, well, the way our history is being told is not told in a way that, favors everybody. There are some other untold stories about other nations, other communities feel that their history is being marginalized, is not being made known. For example, we have 12 languages in South Africa, but there are other languages that are hardly spoken, hardly talked about. So, what is your opinion on that? Do you believe that all the African people, the African groupings, are they all equally recognized? Is our history equally recognized and equally well said?
Well, our history is not equally dictated and written down. Like history coming from the start, out of a colonial point of view, it started with the missionaries, the written words, teaching, reading, writing, Western ways. So if we look at other cultures in Africa that didn't, necessarily follow that path, a lot is lost, a lot is still unknown. Like indigenous knowledge systems, it's quite a few years back. My time frame with COVID's a bit lost now, so I'm going to say something like 8 years really made an impact from national government's point of view for all of these stories, the knowledge, the history behind languages, practices, and one of these indigenous knowledge systems also birthed, or rather, oral history, connected with that indigenous knowledge system, because a lot of knowledge and history is verbally portrayed, from one generation to another. So it actually falls upon historians to find a passion project, especially in these various, topics, discussions that not a lot of research has been done on, because if we don't do it now, it's going to get lost. I myself had an interview with an old lady like a week back. She's on her way to frail care. Uh, her sister um, was the guy, she was married to the guy that looked after Melrose in the 1970s. So, I mean, this woman is on her way out, to, put it politely, but nothing was written down. I had to go physically have an interview with her to actually get it on script. Otherwise, all those stories would have been lost. Just that time frame, the people that still worked, for the original owners still lived on the property, their generations. So it was this like intergenerational community, like various families actually still living there. So it's a very good point, and we should really focus on that as a, especially a historical society. I myself want stories because that's the unattainable knowledge. And if people die, you're not going to get that. Because if I tell you something and you tell your friend something, it's not always necessary to say it's the same story as well. So the sooner you can get it, the sooner and the truer the fact is on paper that we can actually spread through our generations and youth and for future reference.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, my other question to you would be, what why we were unable to what is it that we need to do so that all the languages are treated and recognized equally? And then also my other question is that, do we perhaps have the Afrikaans biography? even online? And if we have,
Okay.
what does it entails? I'm just giving you just one, say Afrikaans. I'm not quite sure about whether we do have the Zulu biography or other biographies, but I'm just asking about the Afrikaans biography. Do you think, do we have it online, or if we have it, what does it entails? If, as a historian, what can you educate us about if there is one
Like,
Afrikaans biography?
like, like autobiographies, do you get them in different languages or language as an autobiography?
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to get the question. This the second part, language as an autobiography.
Yeah,
Do you get
language,
that?
yes, and language is an autobiography, yeah. The language biography.
Yes, you do get it. It's very this country is very interesting, but we are not alone. There are far vast, other countries. Let's for instance say India. I mean, how many languages do they have? Oh my goodness, I think at least double or triple as us. But yes, 12 languages. The thing is, I think like government, and this is starting from back in the day, like 200 years back, really has done all of us an injustice, starting from way back. If you're in a country, teach the local language as well. If you want to trade, teach the traders language as well. For everyone on earth, it was mainly the British, that people traded with during the colonial era. Hence, our official language is English. It's none of our first language, but it is the traders' language. But yes, it would have been nice to have the choice, at least, or even if you are told that your second and your third language needs to be a local language. I think we would have struggled less in a sense. It would have really assisted with like integration. And what I mean with that is when one speaks, to one another, and especially in the education forum, a child can, express himself far better in his mother tongue than in his second language, which is like English, and vice versa. So there's actually like an equality there that is lost to all of us. And I feel that is being at fault for many years, like literally, I want to say 200 years. It's a fault that could have been rectified.
Yeah. Now, to the generation of today, particularly young people, mostly would often ask the question, what is history and how does history influence our way of life, and what is the importance and significance of our history? What would be your response?
Well, we have a very interesting history. If we're taking the 400 plus years of colonial history, if we just look at that, and then if we look at the prior colonial history, that was a time of bliss, no traders came here. This was before 1423 with the Portuguese. It was just so nice. The southern part of Africa was actually just so serene. I think it's everyone's dream holiday destination. But then, obviously, with international trade, colonialism also came. And with the Cape Point becoming a trading station, for them to actually also get, fresh produce and just go about their way on their way to India. So we are still a young country in a world sense, getting involved with the whole world, that it still keeps it interesting. If we look at Europe for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, millennia, those people have had so many history lessons to learn from. We only have a few hundred years. So this country is kind of still in its infancy, but to me, it's doing brilliantly. It's really trying to rectify through every, political regime, from union, republic, apartheid, and then a democracy, this country has grown quite exponentially. And it really has tried to rectify the historical sphere that we understand, that we know, and it constantly grows as well. Yes? Oh.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And yes, so history is very important. It's a storytelling, experience. It tells you where we were, where you are, and where you're going to go. It's a lesson that you need to learn, especially, you know, things that happened bad in the past, like the Sharpeville massacre. Take from that. Don't do that again. Don't hang people. Don't put people in prison for 27 years as a political prisoner. Really learn from your mistakes and how to rectify that. But from those bad things, the Union buildings became a World Heritage Site. I think the Sharpeville Massacre site also became a World Heritage Site. There were quite a few that the UNESCO actually granted World Heritage status to, here in Gauteng specifically. So good things grew out of that. So history is about becoming better and learning from the past. So it's not something, history can be upsetting, but it's not something that you can change. It's already in the past. It's something that you don't need to repeat.
So, talking about the history itself, what drew your passion? What drew you to be passionate about history?
I like stories. Like literally, like a cultural historian is about the fun part of history, I almost want to say. My speciality is on the 19th century Victorian history. So it's about the women's role in the house, what mannerisms was used. For instance, just the language of the fan. There's a whole language where you tell a guy, no, go away, or I'm hungry, or let's chat later, let's talk later. This is one object, and there's a language attached to it. So this is such intricate stories that's not always written down. It's not life-changing for economies, for countries, but as a woman, this is very interesting. And some of this is a lost art that I feel we can actually try and revive, but people just don't take note of it. So, as I say, the fun part of history.
Ah, great stuff. Still having a conversation with Melissa Lindick. She's our guest tonight. Now, on the issue of the young people having interest in our museums. I wanted to talk about our museum as a museum manager at the Melrose Arch Museum. Just take us through what is your role there, and take us through what is the important also and the significance of our museums in South Africa.
Melrose House Museum. The significance of that place is where the peace treaty was signed that ended the South African War. So previously known as the Second Anglo-Boer War, it has been renamed the South African War because certain groups were excluded out of the history books. So it really was an inclusive war. It was this country against the British, empire, trying to overtake South Africa from the bottom up. And this all started with 1886 with the gold rush. The Brits had Cape Town, then they got the diamonds in Kimberley, and now it was the gold in Joburg. So they really were pushing upwards, fighting with all cultural groups, whites, Ndebele, isiZulu, Swazi, all of them, to just get, all the mineral rights. We were paying taxes to that country for many years still. We were one of the Queen's colonies. The late Queen, sorry. The lady died. I got off point there. Oh, yes. So that's war. The peace treaty was signed inside that house. And that is a very terrible war. It's basically where a third of a population, it's not a lot by the numbers if you look at it, it's like 27,000 white people died, but it was a third of the population that was murdered by the British. Between 18 and 22, 24,000 black people died in concentration camps, which was also quite a chunk out of the black population. So the numbers don't sound bad, but percentage wise, the British actually really chopped off, on the population in South Africa. And that was the concentration camps. So the Brits were the one that actually got that bright idea. Kitchener was the one that lived in Melrose House and like, yes, I need to put people in concentration camps, burn down their houses, kill, all their cattle and just burn their fields and leave them hungry. Yes. So
Yeah.
I manage that place, and the collection is under my management. So the collection is about 85% of what the family left behind. They started to live there in 1886 up until 1968. It only opened up as a museum in 1971. Other than the museum collection, we actually have rental space. So we've got DJ events. We've got a very nice garden. It's an urban garden. You don't see that a lot in cities, so we are very blessed with it. We've got functions in the garden. We do rent that space out. We actually have a lecture hall that we rent out, but then I also run programs with some of my stakeholders. The one stakeholder is Pretoria Historia, and she sponsored a herb garden. So I'm trying to change this whole garden into a community garden where you can heal yourself and, get food from the garden. The trees that we cut off, due to it actually being haphazardous to the neighbors, were replaced by fruit trees. We've got grapes there, there's lemons, we've got indigenous herbs there. So we just did a water-wise garden as well. So yes, I try to do a little bit of everything because you do need to open up the space to the community. It's not just a stagnant museum, for people to just come and visit. It's a living space.
Great stuff indeed. Now, take us through some of your exciting community project that you are involved in. The other one, can you share with us your exciting project that you did at the Nelson Mandela Drive? What was the objective and the aims of the project that you did at the Mandela Drive in Tshwane? Take us through that.
The Nelson Mandela Drive, the project Sleeping Mats project, that one.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that one. Yeah.
Yes. So that was also one of my stakeholders. The big issue is with waste management within the city is, it's literally, we've got the waste pickers, but they're actually helping the city, going through waste and taking it to waste collection centers. But in fact, it's also dangerous for them on the roads. But those are also the homeless people that live, under the bridges. And the city is the capital with the most homeless people. And I think the number actually increased exponentially after COVID because a lot of people still comes to cities, and wants to start anew. And then problems arise and it just really goes south from there and you can't get back to your family. So this is kind of what you end up doing. And since there's always plastic and waste everywhere, I don't know why people just don't put it in a dustbin. But in any case, was a sleeping mats project because if we look at plastic, it's, it can isolate, it isolates heat. So you can actually knit yourself like a blanket. You can roll it up. You can take it with you. It's going to keep the cold out. It's going to reduce waste from the streets. I'm not saying, pick up all those gross plastic bags, like you do wash them and it goes through a cleaning process. but that's actually how you can just, reduce waste as well and upcycle plastic bags, is to help someone else, and especially with a problem like homelessness. If they do come to my workspace, if you're ill, we'll give you herbs, if the trees are fruiting, have an apple. It's a community space.
Now, as Melissa, what keeps you inspired, and how do you keep yourself grounded all the time?
I really just take it day by day, and Jesus grounds me, is all I'm saying. I'm living a miracle day by day. So really that is it. That is my secret to life. And just so many people always want to help. I don't know where all these angels are coming from, but blessed are they all. And if I can help them, I really will and would.
Yeah, and then also as Melissa in life, if there is something that you can't do without, or you can't live without, and also which is your favorite space in your home, and what it is that you can't live without in your life?
I I have to say it's my couch. I specifically drove to that shop to measure myself on that couch so that I can sit properly, I can lie down properly. Either way, it can change because COVID, I just had this tiny couch, didn't work for me. I was like, I'm going to spoil myself over, and I'm going to get myself this nice couch. And I just want to sit there, just want to relax. I just want to stretch this little space. So now if I die, that comes with me, is all I'm saying. That, my plants, yes.
Yeah, just take us through during the COVID-19 virus. How has the COVID-19 virus impacted you? Um, how many of your loved ones you have lost?
I was very lucky. Um, I didn't lose any of mine. The one was very close, but I don't know why my parents always decide. I'm still blessed to have both my mum and dad alive, to go for operations together. Like the commitment's not just in marriage. It's like, let's just go get operations together. And they decided those things in COVID as well. So I had to drive into, provincial, get them there, and it was a little bit of a touch and go there with my mum at one stage. So blessed am I to still have her.
And then as someone also who has love for helping people living with disability, right?
Mm.
How can we motivate people living with disabilities, especially the blind communities, to stay positive at all times in life?
I think those people have like superpowers. Although they can't see, I swear those people can hear kilometers away. I myself have, favorite things to see, favorite things to smell, favorite things to hear. I think they're just so in sync with their surroundings that they just live life on a different level that I think we can't even imagine. I mean, for you to just like have that sensory experience the whole time. I am not saying that, it's a good thing. I just think they appreciate life just a little bit deeper, especially anyone with anything, just really appreciates life a little bit deeper, and the understanding and the meaning of it. And a place like Melrose House Museum is actually a perfect place for them. There's come have a sensory experience in the garden, listen to it, you can feel it. I mean, you can smell the antiques. So it's an ideal space, for instance, like them. I'm trying now to, so if someone wants to sponsor me vegetables, I'd really appreciate it. The Dawn syndrome community, the lady actually reached out to me and she asked, can she bring them, past the garden for once a week? And I'm like, sure. I do have, staff that tends to it, but an idea is if you can get vegetables, then they can start their own garden and tend to it so that they actually have a dedicated space, a dedicated task to do these plants, these vegetables, and anything that comes from it, it's their produce to do with what they want, so that there's actually just a space for them to relax and take their time. So no, it's really, a space needs to be a healing space. A heritage space needs not just make you cry, it needs to grow.
Absolutely. Now, still talking about our museum industry, as a woman working in this industry, how have you grown personally, and how has the museum industry changed in the last couple of years?
Oh no, that changed the year I started. Look, you kind of go study museum things so you can work with dead objects, like pens and whatever. And then someone decided history is going to be a people occupation. So you just become a people person, So it's very, it's very interactive. My role, how it has changed me is really, thinking on your toes, because we're a municipal museum. So anything can happen at any time and you need a solution. There's no problem. There's like a make a plan slogan. So you need to make a plan.
Yeah, and then also to young women out there, Melissa, what advice would you give to young women in South Africa who inspire to join the industry that you're at?
Really have a passion for it. Like I this is something that takes up so much of your time that if you don't have a passion for it, it's really going to kill your soul. So if you really like these types of things, the industry is still growing exponentially. If you have new ideas, if you've never heard anyone else say it and you think these two things can work together, do it. Go for it. You will never know what you don't try in life. And it's a very nice industry. I mean, it's housekeeping. Literally, they call it housekeeping. Not, not that I look down at women on, just doing house chores and stuff, although I clean my house because then I do it right, you know. But it's specific, and please do take note that it will take up a lot of your time. So love it, love your job, choose this as a love.
Yeah, I want us to talk about mentorship. Do you believe in mentorship, and why do you believe mentorship is important? And then also, who are your role models or inspirations, and why?
Okay, mentorship is very important. It was, is, and always will be. Although, if you push someone in, they're either gonna drown or they're gonna swim. So that's also, you might solve issues in life, but mentorship is just a gentler form of actually helping people, providing people a platform to ask a question, and not feel stupid. Um, Mentors should be there to tell you rather do it like this and this and this and this. So if there were more mentorships throughout all industries, there wouldn't have actually been a struggle, with skills transferred within generations. Because we can see in various sectors there is a definite issue because there was no mentorship program and no skills were passed on to the youth. So wow, lot of the stuff is a bit messed up there. My inspiration for history, I'm going to say the great ladies like uh, Marie Antoinette, Catherine the Great, Cleopatra. I'm like, if they can do it, man, so can I. I don't want to be a queen, I want to be queen of my own life, but history wise.
Yeah. So now, Melissa, our history. You have said quite mouthfully. We have such a very fantastic history. So now, our South African story. What story are we telling the African continent as well as the world? What kind of stories are we telling the continent and the world as South Africa?
Well, the story that's going to make us the most money now currently, there is actually a Africa Summit conference now, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, where a lot of the countries are coming together to actually trade out, secrets and their stories and what's happening and all of that. So the one that's going to make money is the Nelson Mandela legacy. I mean, a lot of sites got World UNESCO heritage sites acknowledgement. They got all these things, got the stamp of approval, and that's really something that tourists want to come and see. So although different spaces in South Africa tell their space story, we do tend to focus on the modern history of the country. I mean, let's be honest, colonial history is not going to sell, like hotcakes now. You can see that in Europe if you want to see like colonial history as well. It's a little bit of a niche market. So we need to sell the modern history of South Africa. And I mean, that is apartheid and the switch over from apartheid. This year was 30 years. So within May, which is Museum Month, so a lot of interesting talks and exhibitions. And I mean, what happened in the 30 years? Did things get better? For instance, MySpace was miraculously restored. I didn't restore it to its original 1895. I actually restored it so that it's more cost effective and people can see that 3 families lived in here, because just the interior with 3 generations living there, I can tell you now that house has been painted multitude of times and wallpapered. So to me, the space must grow. That's an example I myself can give from the 30 years that has changed. The fact that I have a colonial museum, but I have house DJ musics going on there, I want to have like a nice potjie competition there. We actually have wildlife, Wesa, and the UN functions there for community project's sake, which doesn't really link in with this like colonial theme, but it's about the modern history of South Africa that we are telling the story, and that is the story to tell. Although I want to get back to the point where you asked me about, the different cultures and the history and stories that are not kept. So even though we do focus on the modern, history of South Africa, one should not lose focus and lose those bits of information and history. I mean, in 100 years' time, that's going to be worth more than gold just to have those little pieces. Just like if there's 5 people there that speaks a dialect that only 200 people still speak in South Africa, please get that. It's not necessarily to say that someone might understand it, but you can reteach it again. Why not? But I mean, if it's lost, it's lost. So it's good that we sell modern history, but we should not lose focus of the history that hasn't been found yet, if I can say it as such.
So then, what should be done? What should be the best way forward to make sure that our history is preserved and protected at all cost?
Well, there is like an international standards that all museums need to adhere to. We also have national standards. But for those types of things, the National Heritage Resources Agency, I think it's them. They actually have like a yearly fund. You can write a proposal and they can fund your heritage project. So please, if I'm wrong here now with the naming and stuff, please don't crucify me. But things like that, projects like that, I think even private institutes and the government should start to fund these research projects. Not because, it's going to look on your CV, but it's a form of preservation that is essential to the whole country.
Yeah. Okay. Now, personally, let's go back a bit to yourself. Personally, when we are not busy, what when it's family time, what would be your favorite food or your family favorite dish?
I have to say braai vleis, cheesy nyama. Yes.
Yeah. And then currently, what book are you reading, and also what kind of music are you listening on your podcast?
Mm. Very angry music, because that's just my mantra to get to work. My current book I'm reading is a novel fantasy by Brian Branderson, I think. It's This is what I love, because this is not, true life and real life and stuff, but I want magic, I want fairies, I want flying, I want superpowers in a historical setting. Best thing ever. I'm sold. Everyone that writes that genre, that's what I read.
So, finally, what would be your message to young women out there who would like to enter or follow into your footstep or to get into the industry that you're at?
Please know you're going to do it for passion, not money. So really choose wisely. As a youth, it's a big choice for you to make. But just remember, you need to be happy, and you're going to get quite old. So is it happiness? Is it money? But get into it as quickly as you can. There's actually short courses as well. I'm chair of Sama North as well. And Sama has started to do short courses, like for housekeeping, record keeping, conservation 101. So it's not necessarily that you need to throw money at degrees in education. Start to look at short courses and things like that, because one of my one diploma was practically orientated, and when I started this job, it was like ta-da. And if I didn't have that qualification, no ta-da would have happened, because the theory and the practice is two different things. So I'm just so happy that I had that practical experience. So my suggestion would be to start looking at that, so that you can know what are the type of things that you like before you actually dedicate, like years of your life and a lot of money.
Well, it's a ta-da. So now, Melissa, how can people follow you on social media?
I'm not on social media, but they can follow the museum.
Yeah, so normally some people normally read some of your articles anyway that you normally write.
Oh, I just let other people do that. I'm like, I know I sound so interesting. I'm really not. I'm just that angry lady with a plant sitting here drinking a coffee. It's like, silence, please. That is who I am.
Oh wow. Anyway, Melissa, thank you so much for taking time to chat to us. It's been absolutely great pleasure having a great conversation with you. I must really say it has been so awesome and authentic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I hope you have a wonderful evening and a great show. And thank you once again.
Same to you, and we sincerely wish you all the best of the best on your future endeavors, and have yourself a fabulous week ahead, and stay blessed. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Cheers. There we go. That's Melissa. Melissa Lindig. She was our guest tonight on this show. Of course, still to come, it's Danny van Logenberg is our guest on the second leg of the show right here on 89.1 FM. It is 10 minutes after the hour, 11 o'clock. Good evening to you, SA. Welcome to the Sweet Sunday Experience.
Non-stop. This is Alex FM 89.1. Elevate your mind.
Hi, this is Saloma Kakangube, and you are listening to the Sweet Sunday Show with MuntuMbanjwa.
It is what it is. Welcome to the second leg of the show, and we are in conversation with the National Director of the National Center for Child Protection. That's Mr. Danny van Lochenberg, is our guest all the way. It's a very good evening to you, South Africa. Welcome to the second leg of the show. Here we go with our second guest, Mr. Danny van Lochenberg. Good evening to you, Danny.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And yourself? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I must really say thank you so much, Danny, for taking time to talk to us. Okay, just take us through to our listeners out there, just in a nutshell. Who is Danny van Lochenberg? Where were you born? Where's home?
Well, I was born in Johannesburg, proudly South African, born 42 years ago, although it sometimes feels like yesterday. I'm a father. I work in child protection, obviously, and like most South Africans, I'm absolutely sport crazy. Doesn't matter whether it's rugby, soccer, or cricket. I love all of them as long as you can be busy. And I do strongman events to always try and show children that anything is possible. And that's my story.
Great stuff. Now, Danny, just take us through, tell us more, what is all about the National Center for Child Protection? What is your role there?
Okay, so our role is quite simple. We want to be like a one-stop shop for any person that wants to report child abuse, child neglect, bullying, anything like that. So anything about a child that needs assistance needs to come to our table so we can assist. We work with all the various departments and role players. We're always open to take hands with anyone. And then we also own 272 child protection hotlines, which are hotlines in different areas where anybody can report any form of child abuse, whether it be a child, a parent, a teacher, a neighbor, and we can offer them assistance. And all of that assistance is free of charge.
So, Danny, just take us through about some of the most common causes, some of the most common cases that you guys normally go through, and what are the causes of those common causes that you often come across?
Okay, so when you look at the school setup, the most problematic thing that happens at most schools is bullying. So that is when one child decides or chooses to hurt, or whether it's physically or emotionally hurt another child. So that's what happens at most schools. And then these days, obviously, with cell phones, we've got a lot of cyberbullying as well. What we find in the home setup is a lot of abuse. So we'll have, because we've got such a big or such a large number of parents being divorced, we have quite a lot of abuse that happens. So children being hurt, children being emotionally hurt, children not receiving the love that they deserve to receive, and then obviously also in the same breath, because there's so many step parents involved, we've got a massive problem where boys and girls are being touched inappropriately by people quite close to the home setup. So you'll find that more than 85% of children that are sexually abused actually happens with somebody either in the immediate family or a close family friend. So that's a massive problem. And then obviously cell phones. The cell phones mean that our kids are spending a lot of time online. Our children have forgotten who they really are because they're now actors and actresses. They playing some kind of a role to get random strangers to like the content that they produce. And that obviously opens them up to be manipulated. And through that manipulation, we could find quite a few youngsters sending photographs, etc., of themselves and then being blackmailed for more photos and eventually to meet up. And then they really get hurt, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then quite very interesting, Danny. We have quite had serious cases of pedophiles in South Africa and all of that. Coming to the issue of children being very much active on social media, what are the symptoms or the signs that parents should look out for? Do you believe that many parents are aware of in terms of what their children are doing on social media? And how can parents play a positive part in terms of curbing this kind of trend?
So there's a few things that play a role, and that's a brilliant question. Because number one, our parents are not aware. And I'm going to use the following example. So I've got two teenagers. I did not grow up as a teenager with a cell phone. So the entire concept of me sitting the entire day, and then the average South African child spends 9 hours per day on a cell phone. So now the entire idea of just sitting on a cell phone, I mean, my parents, if I had more than 1 hour of TV time, they chased me out of the house. So as parents, we didn't grow up with it. So we don't really know of all the pitfalls, and most parents are completely clueless to the fact that their children are getting up to silly and let's be honest, stupid things on their cell phones. Second problem is because of the dynamic in the country in terms of crime, it's not as easy just to say, listen, kids, go play outside. Because obviously that also plays a role when children get trafficked, children get taken, children get kidnapped, etc. So all of those things together play a massive role. Now, to answer your first question, what should parents look out for? And what could they do differently? First thing they need to look out for is a change in behavior. So when your child all of a sudden changes behavior, there's a clear-cut sign that something is wrong. What exactly might be wrong? It could be many things. It could be bullying. It could be a change in friends. Then open communication. So once you see that something is wrong, is to have that open communication to create that safe environment where a child can say to you as a parent, listen, mom, listen, dad, something has happened. I've made the following mistake. But because of the mistake I've made, I'm now in a rut and I don't really know how to get out of it. So one of the positive things parents can do is look for alternative things to do together so that cell phones do not become a 9-hour part of a child's life. Because, I mean, 9 hours on a weekend is 27 hours out of a possible 72 that a child is on a cell phone. Plus sleeping time, all of that. We do find that our children actually don't spend any other time but on cell phones and then sleeping. So there needs to be better communication. There needs to be, listen, you make mistakes. I always use the example when I was a youngster, we just got to TV. I mean, ETV just came out, you know. So there wasn't really a lot that you could do. You didn't have this device in your hands that had instant access to pornography, instant access to any stranger that you would think. Like when I speak to kids at schools, I normally ask them, do you go to strangers and actually just start talking to them? And the kids say no. And do you go to strangers and share intimate information, photos with them? The kids say no. And then I ask them, but who's got Instagram? Who's got Snapchat? And then all the hands go up. And I'm like, okay, but there's 2 billion strangers on these apps. On Snapchat, there's 788 million strangers. And you don't even need to have a proper profile. I can phone you just because Snapchat shows me that you're close to me. And you might be Caterpillar 101 and I might be Kitty Cat 222. And you've got no idea who you're talking to. It's a complete stranger. And these kids are falling for that because they're becoming actors and actresses. It's all about the strangers that love them, no longer about what is truthful.
So then what would be your advice? What would be the sustainable solution to this problem?
Well, like I said, so we need to have conversations, open, honest conversations, and we as parents must stop trying to be our kids' friends. We must stop this nonsense of, but I can't take a cell phone away because it's my child and they've got human rights and all of that. So what you're saying to me, or most parents say to me, so my child can go to their bedroom with a cell phone, and then parents go to sleep at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and put on their cell phones until 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, with absolutely no supervision. I mean, let's be honest. We don't really go to our parents with all the mistakes we make. So now, if they're making mistakes, where do they go? Because if they go to somebody at school, they're going to get bullied and they're going to get teased. If they go to their parents, they don't feel that's a safe space. So parents need to create open, honest communication, but also a safe enough space to say, listen, my child, these are the dangers. If you do have TikTok, let's make sure that you are safer, or Instagram, or Facebook. I mean, I'm shocked to hear that kids as young as 9 or 10 have Facebook accounts. But now, if you are determined to have Facebook, let's at least block your profile so that these strangers cannot access you. Same with WhatsApp. All our kids tell me they've received a message from a stranger on WhatsApp. I've received messages from strangers. I'm sure you've had as well. But how do I now make sure that that stranger is at such a distance that he doesn't see my profile picture, he doesn't have access to my status updates, so that whatever the stranger sends to me, I can go, Mom, Dad, I've received this message. I think it's a stranger. And that can only happen when we've got open, honest communication at home, saying these are dangers, but we need to look at this and we need to have these conversations. So this might happen. If it happens, please come and let's have a conversation about it.
All right, that's Danny van Locherenbach. I want us to go back to the issue of bullying. Surely, Danny, people are not born a bully, right? And I would like you to educate us more in terms of what drives people to become bullies. And also, I want to hear your perception about children of substance abusing parents are said to be more likely to be abused than children of parents who are not substance abusers. What is your take on that, about children of substance abusing parents are more likely to be abused than children of parents who are not substance abusers?
Yes, I'm going to start with the bullying, and you said it brilliantly. You're 100% correct. That's one of the things I say at schools, is none of you were born as a bully. None of you got to hospital and a doctor goes, I knew mommy has a bully for you. That's never the case. So bullying is normally a child that's unhappy with it could be many things. And that unhappy child then makes a decision to say, I'm upset, I'm hurt, and I'm going to duplicate that hurt onto someone else. So it's so important that we tell these children that there are safe spaces for them to go and say, whether it's teacher, whether it's mom, dad, whether it's counselor at school, to say, listen, I'm not feeling well. I feel like I can strangle someone. Please, can I have 5 seconds to just calm down before I have to enter that day? One of the questions I ask kids at schools, how many of them have a fight with their mom or dad that morning? And quite a number of them put their hands up. Now, I don't know, in your house and my house, some mornings before school is a little chaos. So it sometimes tends to boil over. Especially I've got a boy and a girl. My boy would say, sister, why are you taking so long? And she would be, you don't have hair to comb, so you wouldn't understand. And that mood then immediately shifts to a school setup. And all of a sudden we expect young children who are not emotionally that intelligent yet to kind of guide through that. So sometimes in that moment, they do things that they wouldn't do 10 minutes later after they've calmed down. And that's true for all of us. Sometimes in the heat of the moment, we say certain things that we shouldn't. And if we just learn how to navigate with children so that we don't, whenever they're in a bad mood, that there's a safe space where they can take that 5 minutes just to calm down. So that's very important. If you're 100% correct, no child is just born a bully.
Now,
yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Now, Jenny, from bullying, I want also to zoom into gangsterism, whereby these young people often pinch their parents' guns and go and use and shoot their school counterparts. We have seen some of these cases in recent times. So in terms of gangsterism, how can the community play part in terms of making sure that gangsterism is nipped in the bud? Same like bullying, the way it's happening at schools. I mean, it's affecting lots and lots of parents, whereby some of these kids who are being bullied, they end up committing suicide. Others, they end up dropping out of school. And then while we're still on this issue, then we see the issue of gangsterism, whereby children are killing each other at schools with guns, and some of these guns belongs to their parents. So where should we put the blame here?
Well, that's a good question. So when it comes to gangsterism, one of the things that we see at schools is that some of the kids feel that they don't belong. They feel being stepped on. They're not happy at home. They've got a stepdad that, for example, hurting mom, and this boy has no way to stand up to that, and he doesn't know how to deal with that. Some of them get bullied at school and they feel they don't belong somewhere. So they're looking for something to belong to. And one of the spaces available and places available to them would be then, unfortunately, be gangsterism, which means they then form part of something where they feel valued. Because one of the reasons they join a gang is because they do not feel valued. They do not feel part of something. Once they now feel valued and they feel part of something, they then make unfortunate decisions. Because there's this promise of fame, this promise of riches, this promise of being more than you can be on your own. And then that, unfortunately, is a lie. Because as soon as that goes south, these kids are on their own. So the communities can step on that by creating safe spaces, again, for their children. Creating certain things that these kids can be a part of. Because if that's the reason they join them, that they don't feel part of something, then we need to make sure that schools are open over weekends, and whether it's a soccer tournament, a netball tournament, hockey, rugby, cricket, be something where they can be part of and be busy with, so that they don't sit and have nothing to do and they don't feel undervalued. Because once a child is bored is when they start doing silly things. Like we spoke earlier about cell phones. If I'm on a cell phone for 9 hours in a day, the first hour you might be Googling stuff for school, you might be searching for interesting facts. The other 8 hours, unfortunately, is when you get bored and now you start doing silly things. So the communities need to get together so we create opportunities for kids to get involved in positive things that are not negative. Because if the kids are going to be on the streets and they're going to get bored, they're going to fall prey to gangs. And unfortunately, most of the time, the kids that have already been hurt fall into the hands of these gangs, and that unfortunately makes them very dangerous.
Yeah, and then also I would like us to look at, to zoom into the issue of substance abuse.
Okay.
As we also know that the substance abuse also encourages young people, even anybody, to commit serious crimes. For example, crimes like housebreakings, murders, burglary, theft, and motor vehicle and shoplifting, and all of that. So, how can the community play part in terms of making sure that our children are safe and protected from this drug substance abuse? Because really it has ravaged our communities. Our children have dropped out of the school. Our children have become something. Our children have acted violently, towards family members. Our children have threatened and have forced some of community members and family for money and all of that. And also it has done so much damage to child neglect.
Well, you're 100% correct. I spoke at a school in the Pretoria CBD in the past week, and my only topic I had was substance abuse. And the conversation with the kids was actually quite simple. Substances are things that children use when they want to feel better about themselves. When there's this promise that you'll feel better, you will be better, you'll be bigger, you'll be stronger, you'll be fearless, That's the promise of what the drugs are. And the sad part is, and like I explained to the kids, the first few bites or the first few shots are free, and that's how they hook them. And only once they hook, then there's a money component. And like you rightfully said, now it becomes a problem because now the child's hooked on drugs. This child now steals from mom and dad. They start selling stuff at home, and that's just to keep this going. And the drugs that they use are, in most instances, not even real drugs in the sense of they've been watered down so much that they only do damage to their bodies. One of the problems is in the past, we used to show these kids all these horrific photographs of their inside and what drugs do to them. Kids don't mind that. They're watching TikTok videos the entire day, gruesome stuff. Those videos don't shock them anymore. We need to have that conversation in a different way and tell these kids the hurt that they cause the people that they care for. When I spoke to the boys, I asked them who is the most important person in their lives. And 99% of them would say their mom. I said, okay, so mom is working 2 jobs to put you into school, and you then return the favor by selling mom stuff to use drugs, which is hurting mom. And when we make that decision and we begin seeing it as decisions or choices that we do, it changes this perspective. Because when you only speak about, I want to feel better, I'm going to use drugs, it's all about me and the reason I use and the impact it has on me. We need to change that picture so that they see the other people that are included, the people that have dreams for them, the people that hope for them, the people that step in for them when they are not performing. You know, that mom that sits with the principal that says, I know my boy is close to failing, but what can we do? Where can we arrange extra classes? And what the feedback I normally get from the kids is that once they see that other picture that they never thought about, they do look at substance abuse in a different light. Because substance abuse is busy going through all communities. And it is destroying not only lives, it is destroying futures. Because these kids no longer have futures because they get addicted. Then it's an up and down, getting out of addiction, going to rehabilitation, falling again for addiction, not feeling good enough. And that snowball never stops. So it's so important that we as parents, we as schools and communities, we as different towns and everybody stand together and say, enough now. There must be a harsher punishment for these guys on the streets that sell these things, because while they are on the street selling this, we're going to have kids falling for it. I worked at a school the other day where the transport driver was giving these kids drugs to sell at school, and if they didn't come back with money, they would get beaten. So these kids were now becoming small little mules at schools, having no idea what were in the packets that they were selling for 20, 30, 40 rand. That needs to stop. Those people that sell these things need to be caught. They need to have harsh sentences because they are destroying lives and they're killing our kids. And when they kill our kids, they're killing our future. And I think once that is in place, we're going to be in a better spot.
Wow. That's Danny van Lochenberg. Now, another very burning issue here, Danny, the issue of this new trend of smoking this so-called hobby. What do you call it? Hubbly. You know, the generation of today, they find this quite pretty cool, eh? It's a cool stuff. What can you tell us? What are the long-term effects of these drugs? Particularly to parents are so much concerned about, young kid telling us that, they've been smoking this hubbly kind of thing. So it's cool. It's not a weird drug. It's not like the other hardcore drugs. So what can you tell parents who are listening to the show tonight about the dangers of this so-called hubbly? Is this a substance abuse as well? Is that a drug as well?
Well, yes, it is. So the hubby and then also the vapes. Because, I've been at schools where kids as young as 6 and 7 have had vapes removed from their possession. So in these hubbies, these kids are going to tell their parents it's safe, It's something that they do to be social, and there's 4, 5, 6 kids that can just, pass on the habli between all of them. It's important to know that there's a lot of fluids within that habli, and they've got different tastes, and also they do put drugs in some of those hablis. Those fluids that eventually evaporate and are no longer within the habli has to go somewhere. And what kids don't realize is they go into their lungs. The same with the vapes. And your lungs was not built to have fluids within them. So it's a very, very dangerous thing. So I know some parents have told me, but we've stopped smoking cigarettes. We now smoke vapes, and it's safe. And we'd much rather see our kids smoking vapes than letting them do things behind our back. Okay. So parents, once you allow that at home, what they might be smoking at home might feel like something safe. But the child's not going then somewhere else and saying, no, you know what, I'm not doing it here, I'm only doing it at home. No. Kids then go, but you know what, I've got this, I can handle this. And then they don't know what are in these things. And let's remember, it's illegal to smoke under the age of 18. It's illegal. So there's no thing that, but these youngsters are doing this, but they're being safe, they're at a home, there's supervision and all of that. That's absolute nonsense. It's illegal. So if there are parents that currently feel, no, but my kids are fine, they're smoking a habli and they're smoking a vape and all of these things, it is extremely dangerous. And once they get hooked on some of the stuff that they put into those hablis and vapes, they are also getting hooked. Keeping in mind that what they're doing is also illegal because they're under the age of 18.
Yeah. Still talking about this illegality of under the age of 19, do you think parents and these kids, do you think, are they aware in terms of how vulnerable are they when it comes to using drugs, how vulnerable they are when it comes to human trafficking, kidnapping, rape, and assault? Do you think most of them, are they aware of these circumstances that can happen at any time within a wink of an eye, under the influence of these drugs and alcohol, that you can be kidnapped, raped, and assaulted and be trafficked?
So that's a brilliant question, and I wish people would listen exactly to this. When our kids get hooked on drugs, there's a lot of money in drugs. Because there's a lot of money in drugs, it becomes a very valuable commodity. But there's even more value in children. So when our kids use drugs, there's a cost. Eventually there's a cost, whether it's a child's life or just money to buy new drugs. What happens when money runs out? A lot of our girls then have to sell their bodies, meaning they get raped by older people to have more drugs and receive more drugs. The boys are also raped, but boys are mostly then said, okay, go steal a car, go break in there, go steal this, bring me this. Now our kids are being raped and hurt. They never get out of that cycle again. And then they eventually get, as you said, trafficked. So trafficking is a massive concern. In child protection, and we say this in our office often, not a lot of people care about child protection until something happens to their children. So if you have kids that use drugs and you don't know about it, then drugs doesn't bother you. It's only after you find out that they're using drugs that it bothers you. But now, unfortunately, it might be too late. So we need parents to not be reactive about these things. They need to be proactive. They need to tell their kids about these dangers. Because once they hook on the one thing, it becomes a big snowball event to get through all the others. Trafficking, the rape of our kids, the hurts of our kids. I can write books about children that used drugs once, only once. Then something happened. They were too high to make proper decisions. They then got moved somewhere, got hurt, got raped, and then got hooked onto drugs because now they don't know how to go back to mom and dad and say, you know what, I've made a mistake. Please help me. Now they're in the system where they then get taught how to lure youngsters into drugs and into trafficking and into the sex trade. So that is a massive concern. So we need one child to falter, and that one child that falters, unfortunately, leads to a second, third, fourth, and fifth. So we as parents really have a job to do to say we cannot be reactive. We need to be proactive. And even if my child is not using drugs at the moment, we need to have these conversations with our kids. We cannot wait until they've used it the first time. I have a friend that lost her child to drugs 2 weeks ago, and he was only 22 years old, and he got hooked at 14. And it doesn't matter how many times he was clean. Sometimes he was clean for up to a year, but he could never, ever kick it completely. And whenever he had a down moment, he ran back to the one thing that he felt safe in, and that was drugs. And unfortunately, now the last time, he didn't want to go through any process again, and he ended his own life.
Now, Danny, what would be your advice to some parents who are already hopeless and helpless about their children? I'll tell you why they are hopeless and helpless about their children, because some parents are very concerned to say, look, they've lost hope, they are hopeless because of their children, they have gone out of the way, some of their children have lost control, and some are considered a threat to the society, and they pose danger to the community. And some people, they tend to give up and say, here is a child who has now resorted into something else. He's a threat to the society. He poses a danger to the community because of this substance abuse. So they become hopeless and they become voiceless at the end of it all because of the way drugs have turned their child into something else. So what would be your message to those parents who have lost hope and are hopeless because now their child have turned or have become monsters? They become a threat when they are under the influence of substance abuse. So they are a threat to the community and society. And at the end of the day, the community will want to take the law into their own hands.
Well, my first message to parents is that I'm very sorry that they are going through something like that, because it must be devastating to have a child that you saw grow up and there was so much hope and so much potential, and then to see it being wasted on things like drugs. So my first instinct is to say, I'm really, really sorry. And as a father myself, I cannot begin to imagine having that hopeless feeling with your children. But what we need to do is we need to also then make hard decisions. We can no longer try and be a friend. We can also no longer try and use soft gloves. It needs to be a hard stance. There needs to be consequences. There needs to be an offer on the table, because I see a lot of older people, their kids go through rehabs using up all their life savings, and then still they don't want to be better. They don't want to beat this thing of drugs. The parents need to take a hard stance. They need to make a decision. They need to sit down with their kids and say, this is the decision that's being made. And then there needs to be consistency within that. So if the decision is made to no longer supply them with any financial aid or financial help, because they only use the financial aid for drugs, then that needs to be a hard stance. It cannot be, but yes, a 50 Rand for something. You're not helping your child. You might feel like you're helping them, you're not. You need to get them to a rehab as soon as possible, to a rehabilitation, so that they can start their process. If they're unsure where to find one or where to search for one, I'll gladly share our contact details once we're done, so that they can make contact with us, so we can put them in contact with a rehab that's close to them. But that needs to be a hard stance. Unfortunately, there is no soft stance or soft gloves when it comes to this. Either you want to save your child's life or you don't. I've seen too many parents that make contact and then they still feel sorry for their child, and then their child says, I'm struggling, I just need a little bit, and then they supply the money for that. And that, unfortunately, is not the way to save your child. They are going to ruin you completely, not because they want to, because they don't know how to stop. So they are helpless, they are voiceless, definitely, But you as a parent need to be a parent in that moment. Take the hard stance, get the people that know to assist so that these kids can get help. And then that child needs to make a decision. If that child then decides against you and they want to be on the street, you can no longer, unfortunately, be there and be destroyed yourself, because you cannot as a and I mean I've seen that where people in their 80s have nothing. They don't have food on the table because they had a youngster that they put through rehab after rehab after rehab, costing millions of rand with no positive impact at the end. And that person, even though it's your child, the person that has taken all that money and misused it does not think of you. They're only thinking of their next fix. So you need to get the right people. And if the right people can't help your child, it's a decision that your child makes. And then the best that you can do, still love your kids, of course, still love them, but don't continue to supply them. Because as you rightfully said, if I continue to supply somebody and they then hurt someone else, they get behind a vehicle and they hurt someone, they lure somebody into trafficking, they lure somebody into to the sex trade or whatever, that person has now also destroyed other lives. And you are unfortunately playing your part in it.
So to still talk about the lungs and all of that. So what about the brain?
Well, the brain definitely gets damaged. If you just look at somebody that uses or misuses prescription drugs, so that's a normal person that goes to a doctor, gets a 6-month supply of antidepressants or whatever, and goes to a second doctor, third doctor, and goes to different pharmacies. That influences the way that they speak, the way that their mind works. And anybody that's ever seen a child born from a mother that is an addict will tell you that that child normally ends up in a school for kids with special educational needs, because there's a massive impact on the brain. And that impact, if the lady is even goes over into her children, and the children show the effect of the drugs that have been used. So now 100%, the brain is impacted, the brain gets damaged, and then decision making gets damaged. It also damages the ability to feel. So where you would, as a normal person, when I hurt somebody or I do something to the detriment of somebody else, I've got the ability to feel bad about it. Those people have lost that ability. They become so numb to feelings, to everything, that when they misuse or steal something from their parents, whether it be a TV or something that they go and sell to use more drugs, they feel absolutely nothing. The part of the brain that has the ability to feel, to think for itself, all of that gets damaged to the point where they don't act like I don't want to use this word, but act like a normal human being.
Yeah. Now, still on that note, you earlier alluded to the fact about the rehabilitation program. Now, other people will argue and say, well, it's not quite a pretty bad idea for drug substance abusers to go for rehab. But now what happens next when someone comes from the rehabilitation center, and then if there are no opportunities, if there's no something to keep you busy, because many people go there to the rehabilitation center, and then when they come back, they've got nothing to fall into. They've got nothing to keep themselves busy on. When they come back, they have nothing to do, and they end up craving, and they end up relapsing. Because there are no opportunities available for them. So what would be your advice to such young people who've been before to the rehabilitation centers, but for other matters it didn't work because there were no opportunities, and there are still no opportunities for the former drug users, or whatever we can call it. The opportunities, Danny, they come back, they've got nothing to do, and they relapse, and they start craving, and they get tempted. They're back again. They smoke, and resources have been spent here at these institutions. At the end of the day, it's not really working. Is the government doing enough yet then in terms of giving more opportunities for the so-called these drug people who have been rehabilitated in terms of opportunities?
Okay, so that's an absolutely brilliant question, and I'm going to start with, does government do enough? Probably not. You're 100% correct. So what we do see in the people that do relapse, they go to rehab, and they get out of rehab, and then they're clean for a short period of time. Can't find a job, so the same stress that had them before the rehab still has them. They then fall into, again, into friends that they used to, because that's, and they normally in most instances use drugs. It's very rare that you find even couples. Most couples will tell you, I didn't use drugs, met somebody that uses drugs, and we both use drugs together. So that is a major concern, and we see that often, that there needs to be something after. I don't have the perfect answer to that yet, but we need to work together between governments and between, I'm going to say church because I'm a Christian, but I mean with whatever religious organization there is, they're always in need of volunteers to go places, to build something for kids that don't have. There's always something that somebody is up to. There needs to be a better channel between rehabilitation and then at least the first 6 months after rehabilitation, where we can send these youngsters so that they can keep busy. Because you're 100% correct. If they're not going to keep busy, they're going to fall into that again. And the only people that then smile are the rehab centers, because it's money received. Child goes out, child comes back 6 months later, and they stand open arms to receive some more money. So we need to work with government closely and say, okay, what needs to be done? If there needs to be a cleanup, for example, of an area, let's start with these youngsters. They are currently unemployed. They've just come out of rehab. There must be a channel for them. And if we channel them there and they get a 50 Rand or 100 Rand or whatever stipend is on offer, that allows them to at least see value in themselves. Because that's the thing that happens once I start working, is I see value. Because I put in effort and I get rewarded for that effort. So if we can get a better system with government, with all the different religious organizations to work together, to say, okay, this is what we've got, this is what we need. It might not be the most fun, it might just be the packing of boxes or the picking up of rocks, but there needs to be something where we can work together and say, there is an option. I've lost count on how many times I've seen a youngster come out of rehab, they've been clean for X, Y amount of time, and then 6 months without a job, 9 months without a job, 1 year without a job, and then they just fall back into old habits. And we need to offer something better. And like I said, I honestly don't have all the answers on that yet, but we need to make sure that we do more. There was an amazing thing here in Gauteng where you can go to school and put your name onto a database to say that I'm looking for a job. Because there are certain things that are available, jobs that are available. Might not be the most fancy jobs, but they are. And there needs to be a better communication between government, between the rehabilitation, between the different departments to say, there are a bunch of kids that want to make a difference. We can't let them all on their own. We can't just leave them with their parents to sit somewhere and do nothing. Let's get them channeled into something so that they can keep busy, so that they do not fall into their old ways.
Yeah. And then finally, Danny, my last question is about the issue of young people, particularly young people, those who would be motorists, those who are driving from time to time, and then those who are on the road from time to time, driving under the influence of alcohol and also driving under the influence of drug substance abuse. Do you really think, do they understand, or do you really think, do they know that driving under the influence of alcohol or driving under the influence of substance abuse, it causes death, injury, disability, even to young people? And nearly all traffic, as we know that nearly all traffic fatalities are caused by substance abuse related issues. What's your take on that?
Sure. So first things first, anybody under the age of 18 is not supposed to use any alcohol. But we know that that's just a fantasy. That's the rule, that's the law. But most of our youngsters start drinking at a very young age. If they do get behind a wheel, I do want to go back to my earlier point. There needs to be harsh punishments. There needs to be a stand taken. If there are harsh punishments, and these kids, because see, once a child makes a decision to get behind a steering wheel, when they're under the influence, whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, they make a decision that is illegal. They then choose that they might be able to hurt someone. They've got no idea what they are up to, and they, in many instances, don't even know that they are driving. They are just too way too drunk to even know what they're doing. So my solution to that would be that we have harsh penalties, harsh sentences, so that kids know that they shouldn't be doing that. I wish it was as easy as to put there, these are the names of kids that have driven under the influence and that have passed on, that have died because of that decision. But that doesn't impact the kids. Because they have got their phones all the time and they see all these weird stuff all over the world, it doesn't have any impact. The only thing that's going to have an impact is there's a punishment that is harsh. This child drove under the influence, somebody got killed, or they just had a motor car accident. They will spend X amount of time in jail, then they need to go and work to pay off the damage that they've done. And once we've got harsh punishments, I think we're going to get to a place where kids will think twice before they do that. But currently, they get a slap on the wrist. That if their parents have any influence, any money, their parents get them off, so they never face the consequences for the decisions that they've made. And unfortunately, if you don't face the consequences for the decisions that you make any decision that you want, and you do what you want.
So then, Danny, how parents should protect these kids from this so-called madding crowd?
Sorry?
How should parents protect their children from the so-called the madding crowd, this mad crowd?
Well, I think again, parents need to sit their kids down and explain to them the pros and the cons. They need to sit down and have open, honest conversations, because I don't think our parents are currently doing that. I think too many of our parents want to be friends with their kids. They want to be seen as cool parents. I blame the divorce numbers for that, because see, once you've got a divorce numbers that are close to 70%, that means kids have two parents. And how's the easiest way to get to the other parent? You use the child. You make the child impossible to live with. And then the parent with the discipline is the parent that is normally the one that suffers. So how do we get them? We need to have open, honest conversations. We need to explain to them the consequences, what could happen, how it could happen, and that impact. See, if we have one child that has been locked up for drunk driving, we can use that as an example, and that will save so many other children. My child, this is what's going to happen. I will not allow you to use my car if you do not do the following. How many parents allow their kids to drive drunk? Because these kids don't have vehicles on their own. So whose vehicles are they using? Why are parents allowing that? So I do think we need harsher stances. I do see in a world where everything is becoming easier to get. People are becoming a lot open and more open to certain things. We've got the kids that go out drinking with their parents. That needs to stop. We need to go back to a space where there's a parent and there's a child, and that relationship needs to be respected.
Finally, how's the future for the young people of South Africa?
I'm worried about the future. I am, but I do think we've got opportunity, and opportunity can go one of two ways. I believe if we go back to a time where we become parents, where we allow our schools to be strict, because currently at most schools there's not a big strictness. There's a lackadaisy. We've got teachers coming in late. We've got kids not attending class and all of that. So I think once we get to a place where we go back to old ways, where we've got respect for your elders, where we've got the people that make decisions respect themselves, be consistent, and drive through values. Because what values do we have? I was explaining to the kids in the week, what do our teenagers stand for? They don't stand for anything. They don't fight for anything big. If you look at the youngsters in the history of our country, what they've stood up for and the changes that they've created by standing up for certain things, our youngsters don't stand up anymore. So I am worried. I'm very concerned. But I also do believe there's opportunity. I think there's opportunity. We've now seen that what we're currently doing is not working. We need to go back to the basics.
All right. That's where we're going to leave it. That's our guest for tonight there. That's Mr. Danny van Wochenberg, who is the director of the Center of the Child Protection. Danny, thank you so much, man, for taking time to converse with us. It's been a great pleasure, man. I must really say thank you. Thank you once more again.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity, and have a wonderful evening further.
And same to you. Have a prosperous week ahead and stay blessed. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Bye.
All right, there we go. That's the National Director of the Center for Child Protection in Pretoria, there in Tshwane. That's Mr. Danny van Wochenberg. And this is how we come to the end of our conversation for tonight. Please do join us next week on the Sweet Sunday Experience. So from me and the rest of the crew, thanks to my wonderful guest, Melissa, Linda Q, and of course Danny van Rensburg, the director of the Center for the Child Protection, and of course to my fellow comrade citizens, DJ Hi-Hats and DJ Uchipare. Say thank you so much, guys. It's been a great pleasure. Mamiri, please do join us next week. I must really say, if I take the cat out of the bag, okay, please do join us next week with the South Africa's top legal mind, Advocate Dalim Pofu, will be talking to us on the Sweet Sunday Experience next week. And of course, Dr. Fisher, if I'm not mistaken, of course, she's the first black woman to start a mental hospital. So she'll be joining us to tell us more. She has started up a mental hospital for African people. So that's Dr. Fisher. And of course, Dr. Fisher, the first black woman to build a mental hospital in South Africa. She'll be unpacking more with us next week. And of course, Advocate Dali Mpofu, the life and times of Advocate Dali Mpofu in the legal fraternity. We'll be talking to him right here on the Sweet Sunday. So from me to you, have yourself a fabulous week ahead. Thank you so much for choosing us and streaming with us on www.alexfm.co.za. So from me to you, have yourself a great week ahead. Until next week, please do join us, Advocate Dalim Mpofu, and of course Dr. Fisher, our guest next week. So from me to you, have yourself a blessed and a prosperous week ahead. Thanks to my crew. It's a good night. Bye-bye.